Many of us struggle in life, and rather than using the experience to grow and take steps forward to our eventual goal, we allow it to halt our progress and give up on our dreams. In this video, we look at why you shouldn't let failure stop you and steps to overcome it. Before we begin, if you find today's video informative, then please drop us a like and subscribe to the channel. Failure is a state or condition that prevents you from reaching a specified objective. It's something everyone will encounter through the course of their life, and as your objectives increase in scope or ambition, so do the chances of failing. The problem most people have is when faced with failure, they tend to let it completely stop their pursuit of their objective. The difference between many successful people and those who don't lead the life they want to is that when successful people have been faced with failure, they try again or adopt a new approach to eventually reach their goal. Others simply don't do this. At this point, you're probably wondering, well, why do they stop? And you'd be completely right to ask. The truth is, many will stop because their setback will result in a lack of confidence or self-belief. However, equally true is that most will stop because of their emotional response to failure. What is this emotional response? Well, think of it this way. Take a moment in your life where you have suffered failure, which stopped you from continuing towards the end objective. In this scenario, remember the reason you stopped going after the goal. In most instances, what you'll find is the reason you stopped was because you felt a sense of shame overwhelm you and you didn't want the sensation again. For example, most people have had to deal with a bad grade at school at some point. Usually the emotional response towards this is a sense of shame and disappointment, especially when you have to show your results to your loved ones, such as your parents or peers. For many, it's not so much the grades themselves that will stop them from wanting to continue progress with the subject. I mean, the grades might if the student loses confidence, but often the worst feelings come from a sense of shame when considering what others might think. So, you understand why failure causes most people to stop. But how do you overcome the feelings to continue chasing your dream? Well, the first thing to understand is that failure is a natural process that humans have to overcome as part of their growth. Thematically, it's a fairly common occurrence in both fiction and real life. Take Thomas Edison, who created the light bulb. In his case, when young, he was told he was too stupid to learn anything and had over 1,000 failed attempts at creating the light bulb. For him, his whole life had been one of trying to overcome failure, so ultimately failure was simply the norm and therefore just a routine part of life before achieving success. Now, this leads to the next point about failure, which is it comes down to a matter of perspective. You can think to yourself that having hit failure, you've reached the end of the road. Or you can look at it as a necessary to understand how to achieve the end goal. When Edison was asked about failing over 1,000 times, he simply responded that he didn't fail 1,000 times, he just found 1,000 ways that didn't work. This is nothing more than basic human nature. When a baby is learning to walk, they fall over and over again until they eventually get their balance right and take their first steps. It's a natural process of learning. So at this point you might be wondering, why does a baby not stop after failing when adults are seemingly prepared to stop after the first sign of trouble? Well, this comes down to how the brain works. In the brain we have the amygdala, which has the purpose to feel emotions, survival instincts and memories. Now think back to the moment of your failure. You've got a memory of a negative moment in your life with vivid emotions as to how you felt at that moment. The amygdala is responsible for you knowing how you felt in this moment and principally sends signals telling you that this is a danger and that to survive you need to avoid repeating the process. As we grow and the brain develops, we become more receptive to our memories, the emotions they cause, and therefore to survive we take what we consider the most appropriate course of action, which in most of these cases means to avoid the problem altogether. A baby that hasn't fully developed yet will have less inhibitions and therefore continue taking chances until they reach their eventual objective. So yes, it's natural to fail and keep trying until you succeed, but conversely our brain is also wired to try and stop us from taking actions we associate with negative emotions as a survival instinct. To overcome failure, you have to understand that while these risks are very real, it's through repeating the process and learning that we develop the skills to achieve success. This again comes down to perspective and rationalizing that in this instance, failing isn't a threat to your long-term survival. Finally, you need to learn from your failures. Some, particularly motivational speakers and gurus, will talk about failing forward. This basically means that it's inevitable that you will fail, but as long as you learn from each experience, you'll be one step closer to your eventual success. Again, going back to Edison, his point about finding 1,000 ways of what didn't work was a poignant comment, as he made the point that what people considered failures were to him lessons learned. This approach of trial and error has been fundamental to our growth as the most dominant species on the planet today. So, what it comes down to is if you want to overcome a failure, you have to understand that failure is a natural part of life, that it comes down to perspective of how you see the failure, to understand that our feelings to try and avoid the issues come down to our natural instinct to survive, and finally, you need to learn from every failure. The last one is especially important, as to quote one Albert Einstein, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Thanks for watching today's video. If you have any experiences where you've overcome failure to reach success, please let us know in the comments section below. Please don't forget to leave us a thumbs up if you enjoyed the video and subscribe to the channel to help us grow.